Hey, and welcome back to another video. I'm going to be playing $60 No Limit Texas Hold'em 6 Max Turbos on PokerStars.com. Again, I'm just going to play 2 games. The other one's probably not going to load up for a bit because it's pretty late and the 60s are definitely dead at this time. Just going to fold the King 5 offsuit under the gun. Maybe if it was suited I would consider opening, but don't really know much about my opponents yet. Only person I think is familiar is Lionheart right now, so I don't think I recognize anybody else here. Just recently I've been playing a lot of 30s, and I've been running really bad. Apparently according to Poker Tracker, I'm about 35 buy-ins below expected value, so it's a fair bit of run bad. I just can't seem to win my flips or when I'm ahead. Uh, It's been a pretty brutal week in that regard. I mean, I think I'm about break even now, and I started off pretty far ahead actually, so it's pretty unfortunate. Okay, so apparently I only have hands on Lionheart right now, and about 6 hands on the Magoon. I don't know exactly what that means. I consider calling here, maybe if we were, I don't know, if I had maybe Jack 10 suited, I'd consider calling here, but 7-9 suited, I'll just throw it away. A lot of action behind us. We don't know what necessarily the limp under the gun means. Sometimes players will be doing that with hands that, can dominate us pretty easily. Plus, obviously, from middle position, this guy raising is a pretty decent sign of strength, although he ends up checking the flop, but he could be doing that with a lot of hands right now. I imagine here the hands that he checked the flop back with are ace-king, ace-queen sort of hands, maybe even ace-10. Just hands that have decent showdown value, but not really worth betting. I don't know what this bet on the river would mean. I guess he probably doesn't have ace-king, ace-queen if he's deciding to bet the river, since those hands have decent showdown value. He checked the flop back. I don't know exactly if he would do that with the jack. It'd be good to know. I hope they call so I can see exactly what they're checking back flops with after being the pre-flop aggressor. That hand makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, I think he limped 8s under the gun. Okay, that's also pretty good information. Yeah, I think the check on the flop's fine. I think you could either betting or checking's fine. I'd probably prefer a bet against just, random fish, because they sometimes will just call you with ace high, especially if they're just, limping 8s under the gun. I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily fish for limping 8s under the gun, but I imagine, it's fine to probably limp small pocket pairs if you, just want to see a cheap flop, even from early position. Because even if somebody raises it, you're not going to be paying too much to call, compared to if you raise and you get 3-bet, then you're in a sort of weird spot. So, but I think 8s are definitely a much stronger hand, and you probably want to isolate. I mean, if you limp, just what he limps, and then what if I decided to limp back with my 7-9 suited, and then you're going 5 ways to the flop with a hand that plays pretty well, just heads up. End up folding 6-10 suited. So far just 3 out of 6 in this other one right now. Our roll isn't, I think we're definitely way too under-rolled to be playing 60s at this point, but I mean, I know at this time of night these games are very soft, so I don't really have any problem doing that, playing these right now, because I imagine we have a fairly large edge over this field. Honestly, we have Lionheart on our left, which worries me a little because he plays very, very annoyingly aggressive on the bubble, and he doesn't seem to fold very much, and I think he's had over us. I usually don't say that, like a player's actually, just running better than us, because obviously in the long run it all evens out, but just when I've been running bad, this guy's been giving me some ridiculous beats, been winning pretty much every flip, it seems. I mean, there's nothing, obviously, in some of the spots it's pretty standard. Some other spots I just don't think he likes folding to me. I think our rep might be a little too aggressive, because, whenever I notice when I'm in hands now with certain players, they just never fold to me. I remember there was some hand that was like 4-4 queen queen ace, and I ended up betting with like the ace 2 because I knew my opponent do not have a 4, nor do they have a queen. So I assume we're going to be chopping more often than not, since I was the pre-flop raiser, so they can't really have ace king. They ended up calling me with king 7 on that board, which I don't know. I mean, because I would just imagine I'm not going to be bluffing there very often, considering they actually. Sorry, I should have said the action. They called me on the flop and the turn, because I was bluffing the whole way, but then on the river I hit my ace. I just figured it's very unlikely that they're just going to check call those sort of hands, knowing their game. Obviously, people have different games, but I knew that particular opponent is definitely going to check raise me out one street in the hand. And there are other times when they just called me down with like 4th pair on board. Sometimes, I mean, I think once they were right, then like 3 other times I just value bet them to hell. So we've been pretty card dead so far. Hopefully we pick up something soon, so this video will be a little more exciting. Okay, they limped under the gun here. I know they limp 8, but I think ISOing with 9 jacks is fine. I don't know necessarily if. I mean, limping also is fine, probably, but I prefer not to get ISO'd and have to fold by another player. Hopefully our internet doesn't mess up. Just hoping we get folds from everyone here. I'd rather take them heads up to the flop in position, because, you know, we're going to obviously just bet pretty much any flop here. Well, maybe not now that we have another caller, but they end up okay, well, I know this guy's never going to really 4-bet us after this, and we are, let's just assume they've called already. We're pretty much getting like 6-1 on a call, and I think it's fine to call here, and if we flop big, obviously we get their whole stack, even if they have like a monster hand. Let's see what that happens. 2-6-3, well, it's going to go check. Well, check bet, fold. Definitely don't want to call here. I imagine their range is super strong at this point, since they limped 3-bet super small. They probably have like a massive overpair. That's why they're betting small. They're gonna, if they shove the river, their range is pretty much face up as like, you know, jacks or better. I imagine they're gonna be doing this with like queens, kings, aces. I think this guy's gonna fold though, which is a shame because I really wanted to see what they had. But I'm pretty positive they're gonna be limp 3-betting with queens, kings, aces once they 3-barrel. Especially on that sort of a board, because you know, you imagine with their ace kings, they're just going to check behind. Even fish aren't going to really go for ridiculously thin value bets. I don't know if you'd call it a value bet or a bluff at that point if they 3-barreled, but raise pre-flop, and he donks the flop. Really wet turn now. Bet small again. Now he bet about 4th pot. Obviously, Alveric, I think with a lot of hands, you could definitely consider raising here. Yeah, I think 2-pair combos, you know, you want to protect, so maybe a raise is good. Because now that last diamond comes off and you don't happen to have a diamond, you're sort of in a big, troublesome spot. He ended up, I guess, betting the flop for value, and then I think he bet the flop for value and then left the rest of the way. I just don't see his line getting that much to fold. I mean, maybe on the river you can get something to fold, but he bet fairly small. I mean, if he shoved the river, that might look a lot more convincing, like, oh, I have the ace of diamonds, I'm trying to get value out of weaker hands. He could have even gotten a hero fold out of, you know, the jack of diamonds, maybe even the queen of diamonds. But the way he played that, it was a little face-up. I'm trying to figure out who that picture is. It sort of looks like Elliot Spitzer to me. If you guys don't know, that's a politician in the U.S. from New York. Other game, 5 out of 6. Don't really recognize any names right now. Oh, this person's in it. But besides that, just Lionheart and me and that other person. Yeah, so hopefully we pick up some sort of a decent hand. The best we've gotten so far, I think, is 9-jack, which is not that good. I think the Mygoon, usually when fishy players come very short stack, they're prone to just stick it in, like just open shove for like 20 big blinds, and you can call pretty, I mean not pretty wide, but definitely kings are not folding. Should really consider how we want to play this. Hopefully he shoves here. Nope, I guess not. Well, we're gonna have to do our own work. We're definitely gonna be 3-betting this hand no matter really what happens. And we have to consider how much do we want to 3-bet. I think 240 is good. It might convince him to call with weaker hands. I think 270 might just, you know, make him fold. He's probably more prone to call with worse. I mean, if he 4-bets, are obviously just not folding. And if he doesn't have too much, he's just going to fold too. He seems somewhat tightish so far. I mean, We don't have that many hands on him, but alright, 10's here. If he shoves, we are definitely calling if it gets to us. Yeah, this is a pretty standard 3-bet get it in spot. I actually like making it pretty big here. I don't really want Dangleberry to stick around in this hand. Maybe 270 would have actually been better. And the only thing we're actually worried about is Lionheart waking up with a hand, or them flatting behind with aces or something like that. But I don't know how standard that is to happen. I'm really annoyed because I feel like they are going to call with a lot of hands. We're going to bet 330. Definitely just want to push this person all in. Get them to fold. If they call, we're going to be in a pretty ridiculous spot. If they shove, we're going to also be in a pretty ridiculous spot. I mean, it sort of sucks to check, if they call here, to check fold the turn. I mean, but when they call, you have to consider, I feel like I don't know necessarily if they're the type of player to actually shove their draws. They might consider calling with flush draws or weaker hands. They're obviously going to call with any king, so it'd be pretty annoying if the turn comes like the 2, and then we have to consider what to do on a king 8 3-2 board against a player who we know has been fairly loose passive thus far. I mean, shoving might be the best option, but it also seems like a very high variance proposition because I don't think we're ever getting called by worse. But at the same time, if we check and they shove, it's pretty annoying, especially also if we check and they check behind. A lot of river cards are just going to be, pretty terrible for us. I mean, any jack, any queen, any ace, even another club would be pretty brutal. So, I mean, I'm fine with how we played that hand. I just think, I think sometimes certain players make negative EV plays, which are actually more negative EV for you in a lot of ways. Like, I think if he just shoved pre, they're going to fold, in which case we could just call and then, deal with them. Okay. I'm not really an advocate of folding here. I don't want to 4-bet get it in. I think we're too deep for that. I think we're going to call, and hopefully they'll fold. This is pretty big. This person, I don't know how often they're going to mess her around. We're not going to fold now, but we're just going to get this in. I think this might just be a very quick game because they could easily have an overpair, but yeah, I mean, calling is whatever. Shoving might work. I don't know. I mean, if they have ace king, I think they're going to fold, but it's a pretty annoying spot regardless. And okay, they called with ace king. We did hold. See, I assume they're a pretty aggressive player. I would imagine they could easily have ace king, ace queen in that spot. But there are also a ton of overpairs in their range too. It's a pretty annoying spot once we flop that good after deciding to, call pre-flop. I think we can never fold. They were betting big. We could have argued for calling the flop and letting them bluff the turn, but I think that they're getting decent odds to even. I actually want to check what their odds were. This person's very loose. We can consider putting in a 4th bet, but they're going to flat us a lot, and then on the flop, if we're just going to pretty much play bet fold, which is going to be annoying, I'd rather just call here and let them bet, because I think they're going to be betting with worse a lot of the time. I think betting like smallish is probably good here. So we sort of protect our hand and also get value out of weaker aces sometimes. I think when he checks the flop, he never has a pair, and ace queen's ahead of a lot of his 3-bet range, considering he's a 29% 3-better over even 42 hands. Definitely going to go set mining with deuces here, even though we 4x'd it. If we hit, there's a very good chance we can get a lot of the stacks, especially now that we have 4 players to the flop and we're getting like 4.5 to 1 almost. Ace 4-5. It's a pretty interesting flop. Depends how big they bet. Okay. I think we're also just going to check fold the turn. I think betting is okay. I just imagine we get called by a lot of pairs that are ahead of us. It seems like a bit of a... I don't know necessarily if we'd be betting at that point for value or as a bluff. Definitely want to bet this river. I think bet fold is probably the best idea in this spot. We're going to make it 275. This person seems to be fairly competent, so I imagine they'll play it properly instead of doing something really stupid. And by properly, I mean they're going to fold most of the time. Because we don't want people calling with like 9-8 in that spot. That sort of ruins our equity. I mean, this bet is fairly thin in a lot of ways, because I mean, we did get called by worse, but you know, when it goes check check like for 2 streets, you imagine most of the time nobody has an ace, and then it's, you know, me betting into 4 people looks really strong. I just imagine, I don't know necessarily how these guys play Lexi from their stats of 40 hands, seems whatever, but these I just imagine these two are gonna, being random players at these stakes, are gonna be paying off a lot of the time. They won't really look into my bet sizing as being super strong, which it obviously is when you're betting into 3 other people. I mean, I'm gonna sometimes be bluffing there. I just don't know how often necessarily that you can justify making that call. Let's go. I want to go back to the hand with the 10s. That started pretty early. Yeah. Okay, so obviously we open. You could argue for 4-bet, get it in. I just don't know how. It depends really how wide we think he's going to be doing this super early in the game. And I know he's a player who can easily squeeze in this spot. We're actually just going to fold here. And we're going to open here since this guy's sitting out especially. We're definitely going to raise, get it in here. Well, we'll get back to that hand with the 10s in a second, but first off I want to see what happens here. They're going to be flattening us more often than they're going to be shoving, but this person definitely is going to be doing some crazy stuff. Could open, we can raise fold here. I guess raise folding is probably fine. Could open, argue for just open folding as well. It depends really on the table. Get flatted. I've seen Lionheart do some crazy stuff, especially when you're super short. So on this board with 2 other players and them being so shallow, I don't really want to bet fold, especially now that he leads out. We're obviously never ahead. I mean, he could have a draw, but we're never, even if he has a draw, he's ahead. His draws are ahead of us pretty much. 8-10 has pretty good equity against our ace-2. Anyway, so he decides to 3-bet. We decide to flat instead of 4-bet, get it in. I just feel like it's too early. This guy's hand, it is composed of like jacks or better, but at the same time it's also composed of ace kings, ace queens, even some bluffs. And if he has the bluffs in his range, we don't want to just get it in. And wow, look at this! He actually, amazingly, he actually did flat us with kings. They flat us with queens, which is even crazier. And we somehow, you know, we just lost the minimum, obviously, but pretty crazy when you raise ace-2 and you get flatted twice by 2. No, I don't want to be a dick. So anyway, he checks, he bets. You can argue for, you know, calling here is fine. I think shoving is also an option. I guess we are sort of getting rid of his ace-kings, but even with our shove, I want to see what his odds are actually worth. He's getting about 3-1. He might, I mean, realistically, it might actually be a call. I guess since the side pot's so small, there's no point in betting here. So, you know, shoving, we're obviously getting snapped by jacks or better. We also get called by 9s as well. Yeah, we're just going to fold here. I don't see him betting super weak. Anyway, so we shove. He ends up thinking he has a good price, so he calls. He has ace-king, and we end up dodging, so that's how we roll. I think limp stab might be probably good against this player. Just keep doing it a lot of the time. Obviously, with our stronger hand, we're just going to bet, but I think limp stab works a decent percentage of the time. Yeah. Alright, we're going to just check fold now. I mean, we're pretty shallow. I mean, 2 barrels might work, but this guy could also call twice with 2 draws, and then we just give up on the river. And, you know, if he has like ace-3, ace-5, we're putting ourselves in a pretty annoying spot. We're going to flat here with 10-king from the... And we flop pretty big. We're going to bet the turn now, obviously, but probably not going to get called very often, especially since he just checked the flop. I imagine he might be a sort of player that just plays fit or fold. Ooh, he shoves. I don't think we can actually fold this. I think if he has a better king, it's just sort of a cooler. I mean, I know he shoved very, very big, and I think kings are a big part of his range, but I think there's also a fair bit of bullshit in his range as well. It's annoying, but we're also the big stack, so it won't kill us if he happens to be ahead. And sometimes, as I said, he has a bullshit range, which happen to be there. We're just folding that. his line is a very high variance style. He could have easily just made it 180, and then if we shoved, he could fold, but he decided to make it, just open shove, which is quite ridiculous in my opinion. We're somewhat short here relative to these two, but we're also going to be ahead of them. I mean, we also have I think we have a decent edge on them. It really depends on how we play it. Ace-8. Could shove here. We could also just min-raise. I don't know how often these two are 3-bet getting it in. I mean, I think if we shove, we can get called by worse, but at the same time, if we min-raise and we miss the flop, we're pretty vulnerable and we're pretty short. I think 10 bigs is fine to shove. It's pretty borderline, though. Ugh. I knew the second he called, I'm just thinking we're way behind. We end up losing this one, but I think if we min-raise and he shoved, we still would have to call, just because I don't think you can raise fold ace-8, 10 big blinds deep against an unknown. I don't know exactly how often he's going to be doing that, but I think I like my play overall. I think sometimes they have ace-7, ace-6 in the big blind, they call king-queen, they're going to think, we're just dicking around, they call. And I just don't think raise folding is very good with 10 big blinds with a hand. I mean, ace-8 isn't super strong, but it's fairly strong. I mean, I think it's just a bit of a cooler in a way. I guess we'd have to know more about them to really know if they're going to be calling with ace-6s and ace-5s, but we don't. So I think the play overall is fine. You just happen to have a bigger hand, and we happen to lose. But we're still in a good spot at this other table, so let's just focus on that for now. He limps. I don't know really much about what his limp range is. I think as the big stack we want to sort of put some more pressure on the smaller stacks, even though we're not super deep. It's a bad flop for us. I guess since we don't have that much equity, we probably should bet. Maybe we can get rid of a lot of this air here. Gonna check. Queen of clubs in the river. We have showdown value. If he has a club, he's not folding. If he has a 9, he's probably not folding either. Even a king might not fold, so I just imagine checking behind here is probably the best option. I think likely he has us beat a decent percentage, but I think all of his value range never folds here. So yeah, I don't know if he would have necessarily folded to a bet there. He might have. We'd have to make it pretty big, and I think he could also check a lot of his hands like that. So we could open queen 4, but I'm fine with just folding it in this spot. We're in a pretty dominant position right now, so might as well just, not try anything too crazy. King 9 of spades is pretty standard open from the cutoff. Four-handed here. I mean, we can sort of just figure out this person's fairly passive, and I mean, I don't know. I think Bo's been playing fine. I haven't really seen too much of what they've showed him down with. But yeah, Lexi decided to limp against us. I'm sort of curious about that play, actually, what it sort of says about them as a player. They limp King 10, which is a much stronger hand than I would imagine they'd limp. I guess they're worried that if they raise and we 3-bet, they would have to fold. So I guess limping allows them to play a flop cheaply. But at the same time, it's I mean, if you're just so afraid of playing your pretty strong hand because I might do something, you're not going to be winning that often because you're always scared of what your opponent's going to be doing. Obviously, King 10 from the small to big is, I'd say, a fairly strong hand. I guess limping isn't that bad, but it's just I think you're losing value, basically. I would have flopped a straight. You're losing value in the sense that I think I'll be calling a lot more often than I'm going to be 3-betting. Like, I could 3-bet bluff certain hands, but a lot of the time if I have like 9-8, I'm going to be calling that instead of 3-betting most of the time. Whereas, like, okay, obviously if I have like ace-2, I might consider 3-betting that instead of calling, but I think when you limp, though, and I limp back and I limp as well, even the times you're ahead, you're just getting such thin value out of your hand. It's just not that good. And even the way he played the hand post, he had top pair, but he checked it back on the flop, and I mean, or he checked to me on the flop, I guess, which is standard. Never mind. That actually makes a lot of sense. But I think raising pre-flop makes a lot more sense for him. Well, hopefully we get at least one win or second place at least in the session, so we're at least break even or ahead by a bit. I guess I'll just show you the structures for 60s. So $60 you buy in for 60. The buy-in is technically about 55, a little more than 55 and a half. The rake's pretty high actually. It's $4.32. Second place gets 116, which is about 2 buy-ins, a little bit less. First place gets nearly 4 buy-ins total, which is pretty solid actually. But you know, the rake is pretty killer at these. I'm surprised the rake's actually that high for these levels. You'd imagine it would be a bit lower. We ended up getting a walk with Queen 7 in the big there. I guess we'll open King 4. King 4 is a little better than Queen 4. Gonna definitely c-bet this one. Gotta fold. So we're just gonna play. I think we're gonna play fairly solid for now. I don't think we want to play super aggressive with the big stack until the blinds get a little bit bigger and we can put some more pressure. It'll be a lot easier when one person's eliminated. So okay, so he 3-bets very, very small. We could actually. I think we might consider just folding here. It seems super, super nitty, but this person's incredibly, incredibly passive. They called they called King Queen from the blind. That's fine, but I imagine they do these super small 3-bets with a lot of their very strong premium hands, and I think we're just inviting trouble if we call. I mean, we could set mine, but I don't think we're nearly deep enough to do that. We're getting 3.5 to 1, and we flop a set like 8.5 out of every 1 out of every 8.5 tries. I think we can just fold here. It seems somewhat nitty, I guess, but at the same time, we don't want to play a big pot with 6s, especially against a guy who's, by all accounts, so far pretty tight. We're just, I really want somebody to bust out of one of these 3 guys because I feel like we can put a lot more pressure at that point on the smaller stacks. I mean, on the remaining stacks. I think when we're down to 3, when we're on the bubble, I can definitely do a lot more than now. He ends up potting it. Interesting that Dom limped in pre and then just check folded. They decided, I guess they're not that super aggressive either, really. Because I mean, when you limp in and your opponent limps behind, you imagine they don't have an ace super often there. All right, he 3x'd it. We're just gonna fold. I mean, obviously shoving would be a consideration, but we just saw them limp in with King 10 and they 3x it now. That's a decent percentage of their stack. We're still in a very good position. It's not like giving up 100 is going to hurt us too much. So I think it's fine just to give it up. He limps. I guess limping behind is fine. I think now it's definitely fine, but we're going to have to be pretty careful considering stack sizes post-flop. Yeah. I guess bet, just get it in against, depending on who shoves, really. Well, he shoves. Depends really what Dom does now. I think we have to just get it in now against this person. They limped pre-flop. They have a lot of draws in their range. We're getting 2 to 1, and we likely have the best hand. They obviously could do this with even other 9s, weaker 9s, 9-8, 9-10, 9-7, and they could easily have 7-8, draws here, flush draws, and we're getting, again, 2 to 1. We just have to call and just, we are ahead. And we do hold, which is good. Yeah, I mean, their shove was perfectly standard, especially once it gets limped pre-flop. I'm going to get it in against Dombo, probably. If Lexi shoves, that would be pretty spewy of him, considering ICM considerations, meaning he has to consider the fact that you can make the money. If you shove and I call, then you're in a pretty annoying spot now because you've just given away a ton of free money to Dombo, basically. Ace Queen, yeah, we are super getting it in no matter what he does. I hope he shoves, or whatever, that's fine. Definitely just going to shove here. He should be folding a lot of the time. He should definitely not be 3xing it to open, by the way. It's just pretty spew. If you really wanted to open, make it 2x. I mean, the only thing that we're flipping, but pretty bad spew by him, in my opinion, by Lexi. We're running pretty good in this game, and as long as we can just hold off for one flip, we should be able to win. I guess min raise is fine. I don't know exactly how they're going to play heads up. They're going to flat us. We're going to make it 1. I guess actually just make it 200. It's fine. We don't want them. I mean 175 is fine, but it's pretty much the same as 200 at this point. I mean you can bet smaller because it's unlikely they connect with this board, but yeah, I think any size would have made it for him fold, except maybe if we bet super small, I don't want him to peel because our hand obviously is behind a lot of their floating range. He 3x, so we're just going to fold again. I'm curious what he 3x with that hand, though, that we got it all in against the other guy. We're just going to fold here because we know he's going to, for some reason, flatting against us. Yeah, we're just going to wait for, I guess we just have to sort of wait a little bit for a hand, hopefully not too long. King 4. We're just going to raise fold. Yeah, well. Hopefully we pick up something soon. Oh god, it's bad. We're gonna, if he keeps, obviously if he kept 3xing us, we're just gonna have to open up our shove range a bit when he, because I think he does fold a lot of the times after he raises. I think in this particular situation, if you like raise 3x, we're definitely gonna get it in. Here's another spot we're just gonna raise fold. I mean, if we had if the blinds were maybe 75 150, I would just probably open shove a lot more than I'd open shove a lot more hands than I'm just you know, doing now. But like this hand, I'm probably gonna just open shove with. I think it's fine to just open shove any ace in the spot. I mean, any weak ace. He limps. I wonder if we shove, do we just get him off of these hands? I figure. I think queen 2 is just a little too weak. I think if I had a better queen, I might consider it. We're going to check shove, so hopefully he bets. Yeah, definitely going to shove here. If he has an overpair, well, whatever, so be it. Or 7, but he ends up calling with actually a considerably worse hand. And I have no idea why he called there. See, even at 60s, you sometimes find some very spewy players. I think he could have just open shoved that. We would have ended up folding queen 2 and then just move on to the next hand. If he ended up limping there pre-flop, we could have. I mean, the fact that he did limp just allowed us. I mean, we could have shoved pre. I just don't know what would he have done if we shoved pre, though. Does he call with queen 6? I think it's possible, considering he actually just called our shove on this flop. I mean, our hand is decent. It's just somewhat vulnerable. I was hoping maybe to get called by some sort of ace-king, I guess, that he would have limped in with for some weird reason. But whatever happened. So we end up coming first. So bought in for 120, make a net profit of about $100. Pretty good for a half an hour's work. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed my videos. If you have any requests for me to play something else, just send me a message, and we'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching.